Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to Answers from my D&D campaign. Um, my good friend, real life friend, Demonac, has a channel called Tales from my D&D campaign where he makes animated videos of the ongoing story of our real life D&D game. At this point, it's got like 40 plus episodes. They're pretty long. They start off really simply drawn, and I mean, I guess they're still simply drawn at this point, but there's like actually a lot of really amazing animation that goes into it. Great custom music. It's a great series. Love it. I've watched the whole thing like 3 times now, and I live the goddamn D&D campaigns. I really enjoy them. His channel has a really good following. And if you haven't seen it and you're into Dungeons & Dragons at all, you should definitely check it out. It's linked in the doobly-doo. Anyway, my character in that campaign is named Draven. And Demonac put up a video inviting people to ask me/Draven questions, an AMA, and ask me anything kind of thing. And this is me answering that. So, I mean, if you're into D&D, then hey, you might find this really cool. If you're also into our campaign, because this is going to be very specific about that. Otherwise, it's fine. It's cool. But I'm going to have a beer. It's the end of my day. It's been a long day. It's hot as hell in here for some reason. I don't know why. I think because I've had the lights on for a while. But we're going to answer these questions. We've got a whole slew of them that he has sent me. I'm going to do my best to get through a bunch of those. Got a question from the Total War Duo. Got a few questions. But a couple of them are kind of linked here from Total War Duo. Why didn't Draven ever talk about his family before the party met them? And how does Draven feel about the other characters? So for those of you who don't know, Draven is married and has a son, actually, but went off on an adventure. And when that finally came up in the campaign, where we actually were in that area, and I was like, oh, I should go meet my wife. The characters are like, why, you have a wife? So why didn't they know? I mean, the thing is, Black certainly knew. I mean, we've been together, like, for a long time. We work in the same organization. We're from the same place. He certainly knew about my family and all that. But why didn't the others? I mean, sometimes, to a certain extent, there's an out-of-party thing, right? There's an out-of-character thing that, like, whatever. We're just sitting around gaming and rolling D20s and things. So there's that. Maybe it would have come up in casual conversation. But I decided that, maybe it doesn't. And it's not that Draven isn't actually quite emotional about his family. He actually cares about them deeply. But I think he's got a certain idea of like segregating sort of work life and family life. But also, what you have to remember about Draven is that he's a racist. The thing is, one of the things I like to do when I play D&D is I like to turn a lot of sort of conventional tropes a little bit on their heads or examine them a lot, right? Like, every D&D character ever is like a detached orphan that's got nothing, totally isolated, whatever, no real backstory. And I was like, no, my character is going to be like, he's sort of involved in that society over there because he's part of the nobility. But I mean, it's sort of a title in name only because of various political and historical events that have happened in that campaign. And he's going to have a wife and a kid because that never happens, right? It's this whole thing. So that's one thing that I would try to turn on its head. But the other thing is, in D&D and fantasy settings, there's always this sort of like casual racism, right? Like, elves and dwarves just don't get along, and humans make fun of halflings, and that kind of stuff. And it's like, let's be real here. Like, that is so weak sauce when you look at how humans with slightly different melanin levels treat each other. So it'd be that much worse in the fantasy setting. So Draven he's a human supremacist. That's what the start was. It was always my idea. He was going to be quite racist, like humans are just the only thing, and these other races, like, we tolerate sort of keeping them around. But the continent belongs to humans ultimately at some point. His thing was to advance human interests. And I knew going into it like that the party was going to be of a variety of different races, right? We've got Angel, who's the gnome. We had Little One, who's the freaking like dragon, whatever. He's not dragonborn exactly, but he's sort of. I don't know what he is. So that was going to be a thing, but it was the idea was like, I want to see Draven grow. Like, to me, my characters are really alive and they take on their own identity. So I wanted to see him grow. I wanted to see him forced to encounter more things. I knew we would start off in dwarven lands, and what would that mean, for example? And so, I mean, he's certainly, he's not violent. He's not necessarily a human supremacist necessarily anymore, but while he and the party have done so much together, and so much more than you guys have seen, because we're actually like probably a couple of years ahead of you guys, I don't think he still sees the characters, other than Black, who obviously he's got a lot of history with, he doesn't see the other people in the party as friends, really. Trusted! Yes, you trust them. Mostly. I mean, Angel's kind of freaky, and Little One's got his own thing going on a lot of the times, too, and he's kind of chaotic. But, it's fine. He'll trust he'll put his life in their hands, for example. But I don't know if he necessarily considers them to be close friends. So to talk about, sort of his family and stuff like that, I would imagine it might have just come up casually at some point, but it's funnier to sort of like build it up to a bigger moment. But yeah, that's still a thing with Draven. And so how does Draven feel about the rest of the party is a question Total Duo asked. Ryan Brewer asked the same thing. What opinion about the rest of the party? And that's it. I mean, he's not strict when it comes to like good and evil, necessarily some of the law and chaos. Well, he's fairly lawful. Draven's pretty lawful. That's one of the things. But he's not necessarily bothered by Angel, because she hasn't necessarily done that many creepy things, like literally like evil things. Creepy, sure. And yeah, he thinks Little One's kind of nuts. But overall, he's fine with them. He's fine to work with them. We get things done. But he doesn't consider them to be close friends, because there's always that barrier that goes on there. So there you go. Panther Lily Panic has a question. Black is your protector and guardian. Your shield, as per orders from the Basilica. But do you see him as a friend? If so, what about Angel and Little One? So again, some crossover there. Let's address the Black thing specifically. I guess there's still, with Draven, it's probably still hard to consider Black just purely sort of a friend and a peer, exactly. With Black, it's a little like, this is going to be fairly condescending, but this is what Draven we're talking about. I think with Black, Draven still can think of him somewhat as like, he's like a guard dog, right? Black is supposed to be Draven's protector, Draven's muscle, Draven's shield. But if something happens to Black, it's like if someone were to kick your dog. I think that's the kind of relationship that's going on there. There's a little bit more friendship, and there's a little bit more sort of like siblingness, probably. But I think in terms of Draven, I mean, I'm certain he thinks of himself as superior, by virtue of like his order in some way. Not from the nobility side. That's never been part of it. But I think he considers the alchemist branch of the Basilica more significant than the Templar branch, for example. So there's probably a lot of that. But I would say that's probably it. Friend, yeah, but like man's best friend is as a dog. Maybe that kind of thing almost. Draven's not. I'm making Draven sound like a lot more of an asshole than I think he truly is. But I'm emphasizing the extremes. Day to day, it's totally friendly and trusted and certainly a confidant, I would say. What else next we've got? Is Draven particularly religious? He's part of the Knights Templar-ish group, but rarely if ever talks about gods. Yeah, so the Basilica, the group that he and Black are from, they're ostensibly under the auspice of Sirius. And it would be foolish to deny that the gods exist in this kind of setting. That obviously doesn't make any sense. I mean, to be an atheist in that, D&D kind of world would be to be crazy, obviously. But I don't think he sees himself as being beholden to the gods. They're people, they're strong and they're to be respected, certainly, but not, blindly worshipped or anything like that. And I think there's there's an appreciation for the sort of justice and lawfulness that that comes with that organization and that deity that they're in with, but not a sense of subservience so much, right? It'd be like you respect your professor at university because you acknowledge that they probably have a lot of experience and they know what they're doing, and if they suggest you do something, that's probably a good thing to listen to. But that's probably kind of where it is. Yeah, I would say so. I think there's a lot of self-reliance with Draven. And I think that also links into the idea of, well, if you're a totally self-reliant type of person, and you build your own solutions to problems, for example, you're not going to be turning to a higher power for solutions to those problems, for example. So there we go. I think that's a good answer. Beer. Yes, is Draven the de facto leader of the group, considering his noble heritage? Or why did he choose a blue-blooded character? Yeah, so I don't think Draven considers himself to be the leader of the group. I don't think he wants to be that. And to be honest, it's hard to it would be hard to sort of outshout or out-influence Little One. And this is sort of true in and out of character. The person who plays Little One tends to, even when he's trying to play different types of characters, he's always the troublemaker. He's always the instigator. And that's fun, because that's part of the fun. I don't like it when, like, you know, PCs in a D&D campaign spend all their time thinking about how they're going to solve a problem and debating back and forth. You kind of need someone to just, like, start shit. And so that's Little One. So he's happy to sort of let Little One do that. I mean, I'm sure he thinks of himself as, like, the brains of the operation. But that's about it. I don't think he considers himself to be a leader, especially since there's a certain amount of, like, charisma and bravado that goes on, especially with Little One, in terms of things like, you know, he's the one that everyone talks about outside the party, right? Because he's the one that, like, beats up orcs single-handedly and things like that. So I think there's that kind of thing. Yeah, but that's about it. And yeah, why did choose the noble character? I talked about that because it's interesting to have a character who's actually integrated into society. The fact that adventurers, mostly because it's just easy to, like, have them drop into any adventure, but they tend to be very detached and not have societal connections. And with Draven, I wanted to have him be integrated into the story and the setting. And it helped that Demonac created a, like, sort of a great setting to do that. You know, he described these areas of the world. I'm like, okay, then that's where I was from. It doesn't do anything for me now because we lost all those holdings, but it makes everything a little bit more personal. And I think that's important, both for you as a player trying to make your character more alive, but also for your dungeon master. Like, give your dungeon master something that they can go and, like, and tug and play with and add extra something or other. You know, for Angel, her Order of Assassins, which there's more or less stuff that may or may not have been revealed so far. I don't know about her integration into various storylines. And with Little One, and, you know, questions about his mother and things like that. So I think that's pretty important. Who does Draven feel more obligated? His king and country of Randy, his wife's family, or the Hand of Sirius? Of those, probably his king and country. His wife's family would come last. I mean, his wife and his child higher up, but his wife's, like, family as a whole, less than those things. Hand Sirius would be very, very close up with the Randy thing. If it came down to, like, right, if we were able to retake the land of Randy, and we once again needed someone from Draven's family to take up the title of the Marquis of his land, and that would require him to sort of quit the Hand of Sirius, then he would do it, because that would be the obligation. He doesn't, you know, seek necessarily power or rule or anything like that, but it's definitely like, this is responsibility, an obligation, and that's just the way it is. I mean, unless he felt like his son could take over that role, in which case, then that would be fine for him, if he felt like that was a good position to be in. Who came up with the NPCs that make up Draven's family? Did Quill do all the work and Demonac prove, or was Quill saying, hey, I'm a noble, I need a family, Quill make blanks, where's the team effort, bouncing back and forth? I wrote the initial sort of little story, like I did. I should have all my story notes up. But yeah, when the initial character was up, I like to do, like, teeny little, maybe a short story or something like that to help give extra context to my characters, and, like, I always do a little bit of backstory writing. And this is something I wrote in 2012, 5 years ago, which tells you how long ago, like, this campaign was when it started. So I have my story in there. Draven rose the hereditary heir to the March of Rowan. I have a note reminding me about the difference between a count and a marquess. The March of Rowan. I talk about my wife. It's like, you know, I've got 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, like most of the story actually in here. It's 5 paragraphs. It's talking about the relationship between Draven and his wife. And, you know, establishing the you know, why they got married, how they approach, you know, like, what their priorities were. You know, Draven sort of kind of married for money to help him fund his alchemical stuff, right? His artificing stuff. So her family's quite wealthy, but he had a slightly more important title, and that was important to both his wife and her father. But there was some back and forth. So Demonac asked me, like, it sounds like they don't get along, and like, made me realize, right, I'd written this from a very sort of functional, this is not a marriage. They didn't get married for love. But I'm like, no, I think they do. I think there's this sort of respect, and they're actually quite close, sort of in private, but it doesn't tend to show that much. So it was primarily me but some question that Demonac asked helped me flesh out the story. So there is that. The Epic Gnome asks, does Draven have any particular plans in mind for Polaron? Yes. Now, my response to that would be, at this point, heavily modified by many things that have happened in the campaign since then. But I think that at that point, certainly, Draven would be like, yeah, we're taking over this place and making a super cool base and making, like, inventing cool stuff and, like, building more golems and battle suits and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he wanted that base. He wants that base. Yeah. But circumstances and all kinds of things have been modified. And is it there? Is it not there? Is Draven still alive? Is he not alive? What's he like? Maybe he's multi-classed into being a barbarian. Who knows? These things change. Does he feel more on edge now that he knows what the Astral Plague does? I mean, I think he felt on edge right from the start. Really. This seemed bad right away. The possibility of, like, wiping out an entire civilization certainly, emphasizes it. But I think it's fair to say he was all the way at the edge right from the start. He couldn't be more on edge about the Astral Plague. This was something that, like, when this first came up, when Demonac, like, first presented this idea of, like, yeah, you've all been infected by something. Like, you've got this thing going on, it's weird, and you can't figure it out. We were, like, freaked out as a group, like, out of character. We're like, what the hell? Like, how often do you have this campaign, this D&D campaign, where there are significant, like, developments, right? And that's one of the beauties of Demonac's world is, like, we felt like there was a real history there, but it turns out there's, like, a real sort of future. Like, the stuff we do has an impact both on the world, but also on ourselves. Demonac presents us with, like, tons of, like, side quests and different things, and we constantly feel like, okay, so we're doing this one thing, but there's, like, 19 other things we, I guess, are not doing now because of these decisions, and it's like, it feels like a living, breathing world. Anyway, but that felt like, okay, and we knew right from the start, like, this was not going to be we're going to talk to an NPC wizard and it's going to be cured in, like, the next episode. No. We knew that this was going to be a big fucking deal, and we knew this was going to be really influential in the campaign, I would say. So, yeah, we felt it right from the start. Right from the start. Daniel Masters asks, spoilerish questions if not up to date. Oh, so presumably, if you're not up to date with the series, some of these might spoil a few things. What will Draven do if the peace offer is accepted with your wife being of different countries' nobility? So, should there be a situation where Draven and his people are allowed to return back to their previous country, which is currently inhabited by KTs, then the fact that my wife is from a different country's nobility is like, no, that wasn't the point. Like, the whole point is his wife and even his wife's family, even though they're from a different country and different nobility and thing, it was about this title. It would be like, no, that's great. Now we're going over to this land and building this up because this is an upgrade in title and extra prestige for her family. I mean, that's it. Like, if there was, I mean, Draven would go from a sense of responsibility, and she would go because like this is also good and important, and it's also a sense of responsibility to her family in a different kind of way. That wouldn't be a conflict. Like, if the March of Rowan becomes something that we can go and manage again, then we'd be there in a heartbeat. Absolutely. And I'd probably push to bring my son as well, because what would happen in that case, it would be, again, that sense of responsibility. Listen, son, you were doing this thing, you were studying to become like an archivist or something like that, or whatever it was. But now you can't do that anymore. No, you can't be with the Hand of Sirius. You've got to come here and learn the ropes to how to manage this territory and be a ruler. Would that be the right term for that? I guess so. Be a ruler of this area. That would be important. Yeah. What are your plans if you get a creation matrix? I don't know. Make all the things. Yeah. What is Draven's favorite book? I don't think I've got an answer for that, unfortunately, but it's a good one. I'll think about it. Jackson Jelinek asks, what sort of ideas does Draven possibly have in regards to the future use of Ginneron and Polaron once he and the party able to settle down for a base? Would Draven want to hand the facilities over to the Hand of Sirius, or would he prefer his own private research station? Own private research station, yeah. He's not disloyal to the Hand of Sirius, but again, he doesn't see that as like his primary thing. And with something like with Ginneron and Polaron, I think there would be a little bit of that, can we let this fall into the wrong hands kind of situation? Only I can be trusted with this knowledge. He'd want to like figure out all the puzzles himself first. And then, who knows? Maybe, maybe it gets turned over, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it, especially like Polaron being out like in like the North Pole or whatever, maybe it becomes his Fortress of Solitude or some damn thing like that. I think it would be that. It would be a base for himself and or the party. More than I think turning it over to the Hand of Sirius necessarily. Ginneron would be harder because it's on the main continent and people know about it. So that might be okay, everyone knows about it, then we've got to get the Hand of Sirius involved here. But Polaron being such a secret, I think Draven would want to keep it to as few people as possible. Yeah. How did Draven meet his wife? I don't know how they actually met. Possibly in court. Then like in the court, like the court of nobility kind of thing, right? Because he obviously had the title, and even with like the Hand of Sirius, he would have been involved in some of that stuff at some. That's probably it. They probably met at court, and or through some sort of like semi noble like matchmaking service, like not like a Tinder, but like an eHarmony for like nobles who are looking to meet up with each other. Like, but I could see that like, hey, I happen to know this guy who's got this title, and he's trying to do these studies that are expensive. You've got money. You've got like I suspect it might have been that sort of thing, right? Meeting through a chaperone, like not an arranged marriage exactly, but an organized marriage. I don't know what the right word would be, but maybe something like that. How did Draven join the Hand of Sirius? Again, I think it's the lawful nature of the organization, plus the fact that they've got a whole Artificer kind of wing to the organization. I think there was an interest in learning and helping to fund his research, as well as, probably access libraries and all kinds of things like that. I suspect there was probably a lot that way. Because again, it was more, and the Hand of Sirius is also responsible for, like, protecting human interests. Right, they are kind of like that. They're protection of the human interests in Verandi and whatnot. So I think there was a bunch of different crossover things. Mm-hmm. How does Draven feel about the peace offer? He's a little bit torn. So this is the peace offer that like the KT are offering with the humans and things like that. He's a little bit torn because he doesn't like the KTs and. I mean, more than any other like race that he's racist against. The KTs are number one. He would like to see every single one of them like killed, obviously. But I think the sense of responsibility would outweigh it, where he'd feel like, well, if there's a chance to retake this land, it sort of seems logical to do that. Let's retake it and then figure out a plan B after that kind of thing. I don't know. I think he is torn, but I think like push comes to shove, he would be in favor of. He would vote in favor of the peace offer, but feel kind of uneasy about it and wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. Why does Draven adventure? Is he legitimately hoping to find magic gear, or is adventuring just something he does for fun? I think it's a lot of like learning and finding magic gear and things like that, like trying to find solutions for Diluvians. There's a limit to probably what he could accomplish at the Hand of Sirius, and so he wanted this mission. I mean, the original mission was on behalf of the Hand of Sirius. There was a few things they wanted to do. It was partially related to these artifacts and the spoon and thing too, I think is one of the reasons he and Black were sent there. So it was very strongly related to, like, he wasn't an adventurer before the start of the campaign, really. It was, he had these sort of abilities. I mean, he might have done a few off things here and there as part of missions for the Hand of Sirius. This was the most significant mission, and also one with a fair amount of freedom to, like, well, we need you to do this thing, and while you're there, do whatever. The implicit sort of, like, advanced human interests, and also find cool stuff both for himself and the Hand of Sirius. But I figure he and Black have enough, a high enough position in the Hand of Sirius that they can sort of, like, write their own ticket in terms of what they want to do, right? They can choose their actions and trusted to pick something that overall is compatible with the interests of the organization. Is an objective he's trying to achieve that afterwards would make him retire. Again, I don't think Draven thinks of himself primarily as an adventurer, so it's not that. It's more like responsibility will come calling, or maybe he'll kill out every last Diluvian or something like that. John Doe asks, if Draven ever lost his hand, would he replace it with his Magipunk crossbow or a boring mechanical hand? It would. I assume it would probably be a hand. I don't think it'd be a boring one. I think it'd be a hand with like integrated like wands that would fire out of it and shit like that. But yeah, like a crossbow is not a very good tool to work with. So I don't think he'd replace his hand with that, like, you know, Ash style. Anything approaching a list of his gear would be cool. I can't give you a list of Draven's gear because some of it would be spoilers, right? Because I have my current character sheet, but it probably includes a bunch of stuff that you guys haven't seen yet. Because again, we are wildly ahead of the videos still. Wildly ahead. Does Draven have any real or fictional inspirations for his character? Yeah, actually, he kind of does. My initial look for Draven was sort of like there's so many like Wild West movie type characters. You know, some of those like doctor types or whatever. Because like the thing is, here's one thing: most people in the West didn't wear those like, you know, cowboy hats, 10-gallon hats or whatever. It was the bowler hat that was like much more common. So that's why he wears that bowler hat and, you know, smokes cigars and he's got his pocket watch and things like that. It was sort of like, you know, a Western gentleman you'd find on a railway because he's going somewhere because he's, you know, he's a doctor or a professor or some damn things like that, right? So it was that with like the sort of like steampunky wild west, sort of weird west, doomtown, like all those sorts of things as kind of inspirations for a look. I don't think there was any character who was inspiration for his personality or backstory or anything like that. But that look was definitely that sort of thing. You know, I'd probably just watched Deadwood. You know, there's probably all those things that were going on at that time. But yeah, with the cigar and everything, yeah, certainly, definitely that sort of idea. For Demonac and Quillikeen, I know TDDC is a 3.5 game and Sunday Morning Heroes is 5e games, but any idea or suggestion how to play an Artificer in 5e? There are, if you go to the Unearthed Arcana website, like the official like Dungeons & Dragons Unearthed Arcana website, they do have Artificer stuff now. A couple of different variants. They're not great. I mean, the first try was like the Artificer as a wizard variant class, which is crap. They've got a standalone Artificer class now that's better, but kind of questionable. But yeah, you could, if you're interested in a 5e variant of the Artificer, you can do that. It's not as much about making magic items in 5e because 5e doesn't really have magic creation rules because, I mean, honestly, they do lead to kind of power creep and craziness and things like that, but it's still quite a lot of fun. For Draven, so in the Diluvian peace contract, you get back your ancestors' land. The question I have is, what will you use that newfound land for? And if you got your ancestors' land back, would you even stay with the party? So some of those questions have been addressed. No, I probably wouldn't stay with the party. I would retire from adventuring or whatever he does, you know, from the Hand of Sirius and all that stuff, and go and manage that land. What would you use newfound land for? I mean, what you would normally do, right? We'd get, you know, people in there to do farming and this and that. Certainly we'd raise an army because as a march is like a county, but generally on the border of a country. So you would have more of a military emphasis, and while in a sense being a marquis or marquess, depending on the language you're using, was equivalently in rank to a count. You were often a little bit more prestigious than that just because of the nature of the role. So there would have to be, you know, we'd be building like border forts and towers and things like that within the caveats of not having too much military in there. But yeah, otherwise it would be, you know, your normal sort of feudal situation. Farming and blacksmiths and inns for adventurers to meet up in, you know, that sort of thing. How does it feel to be the face of the party? When your nerdy artificer is pushed to the front to talk to the giant lumberjack robot. Ah! Yeah, it happens from time to time. I mean, Draven's not incompetent or incapable of having conversations with things, and certainly robots. I don't know if Draven's the face of the party. I feel like Draven might be the reasonable one in the party, except for that one time where Black negotiated the peace with the, I got a phone call coming in. Is that something I got to deal with? No, it's not. Other than when Black negotiated the peace treaty with the Rakshasa, which was really impressive. Generally, Draven does feel like more of the reasonable one. But I don't know about the face. Peace Hammer. Does he have any long-term crafting projects, ideas you'd like to build? I I don't know how to answer that within the context of what was going on there. I don't know what gear I had or didn't have. You know, it was always generic sort of like upgrading projects. We do have the big giant, presumably we have it at that point in the campaign that you guys have seen. We have a big giant aberration eyeball that could be used to power something really insane. And we keep talking about like, we're going to make a flying castle kind of thing. So that's probably maybe, you know, one of the big crazy long-term projects, but that's about it. Any crazy crafting ideas you came up with were rejected by the DM? No, my ideas don't tend to be crazy in that sense. Other players, yes. What made you pick your class over a wizard? A couple of things. One, it's different. You know, you don't see the Artificer very much. And the other thing is, Eberron is my personal favorite D&D campaign setting. I love Eberron. And we've never played Eberron with the group of people that we play Tales from a D&D campaign with. So I don't think Artificer had ever come up. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. It'll be kind of a cool supporty role. And yeah, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It is a lot of work. Like, you know, because I can, in a sense, cast any spell from... It's been a while now since we've played 4th level and lower. So it's like, oh my god, I got to keep, like, notes about, like, these spells, and I'm not as good about like obsessively reading all the D&D books like I used to because I have more stuff I have to do. It's like, oh man, if I knew more spells off the top of my head, it'd be so much more dangerous. But yeah, that was it. It was fun. It was different, and I've been really happy with them. Mechanics question: how to use up your hero action points or whatever is used to use most infusions that require 1 minute casting to 1 round? How do you choose when it's worth it? So, for those of you who don't know, a lot of the Artificer powers actually take 1 minute to do. Like all the like I buff your weapons kind of things takes a minute to do. But in Eberron, which has got this sort of like, I don't know, noir action style or whatever, they introduced this action point mechanic. Now we in standard 3.5, which includes our campaign, we don't use the action point mechanic, but without action points, the Artificers kind of poop, because one of the things the Artificer does, instead of using action points for the normal stuff, which is like adding 1d6 to your d20 roll for like, you know, better success and things like that, the Artificer mostly relies on that to make his infusions go like in a round instead of a minute. So we went and like, you know, sort of house ruled a thing so that I still get some action points so I can do that. How do I choose when to use it? Mostly like when shit looks bad and dangerous. Mostly like, I just assume, like, every fight is a significant fight. Because that's more or less the flow of the campaign. So if I didn't get a chance to buff the party before a fight, I'm going to be spending the first 2 or 3 rounds of the fight trying to insta-buff the party as much as possible. And this is, like, something where I feel like I can maybe contribute more by wanding. Like, if I think the fight might be too short, then maybe I'll focus on doing like more straight up damage as opposed to buffing. But any fight that looks like this is going to take a while, then I usually just sit back and be like, buff. How old is Draven, and how long has he been adventuring and artificing? When did he first meet Black? So at the start of the campaign, Draven was 32. I don't have a good sense off the top of my head about how much time has passed in universe. I feel like maybe a year has gone by in universe at the point of the videos where you guys are. So he's you know, 32, 33, 34 maybe, something like that. When did he first meet Black? I feel like he's known Black for a long time. I'm getting a phone call on my freaking cell phone now. I gotta put a cut in this. Okay, sorry about that. There's only like 3 people in the world who have my cell phone number, so like when it rings, I'm like, I should probably answer that. My sister says hi, by the way. When did you first met? Oh, I feel that Black and Draven probably joined the Hand of Sirius at about the same time, because I think they're roughly a similar age. I don't know if we've ever formalized that, but in my sort of like, I don't know, mental canon, I figure they probably both joined when they were like, you know, late teens kind of thing. Like, I don't know if we've been in that organization that long. I don't know if we ever really decided, or if even I decided, but that's the sort of thing I feel like might be right. Ice Queen Glaze asks, what do you think about your wife and kid? Do you like spending time with them? And also, how old is your son anyway? So with that, yeah, I mean, I like them a lot. Again, it's a sort of a relationship that might seem cold from the outside, but I feel is actually quite warm. In private kind of thing. I like them a lot. And my son is supposed to be like a little older than you'd expect. I figure that the relationship with Draven and Ivana, like it might have been sort of like organized and arranged a little bit younger. Like they might have gotten married at like 15 or 16, had a child not that long after, kind of thing. Because in my mind, my son Tobias is early teens now, like old enough that like you could be a D&D character. Like that, my thing was always if Draven died, I would possibly come back as his son. And so it's one of those things where it's like things are a little fuzzy. It's sort of like a Game of Thrones thing where like in the novels, like all the characters are like 13, and you're like, what? How does this work? How are you leading armies? You know, that's sort of like fuzzy idea. Or it'd be like there's a thing in soap operas. If you watch soap operas, there's something that's that's referred to as soap opera rapid aging syndrome. Because you see, babies and kids aren't interesting, so you have to age them up faster than makes sense. Like two characters on this TV show had like a baby together like 8 years ago in real time, but now that child's like a 19-year-old going off to college, because then you get to have like cool relationships and drama on screen. You're like, wait, what? So it's like, it was one of these things where like I leave a little funny. Maybe Draven's supposed to be a little older. Like his original character description was 32. Maybe Draven should be 40. And then, you know, again, it gives a little bit more of a margin for his child being a little older. But so a little fuzzy there. Why didn't you get a new familiar? Realms asks. Well, I did get a new familiar. It's the book. And Holden Adams asked a similar question. When will make a homunculus named 8? So I had a homunculus named 7, and things happened to him in that astral gate. I have a book now, and there's rules in the Unearthed Arcana to do something called an item familiar. Now the rules as is in the Unearthed Arcana is actually a little OP, like abusable. So we're not using that as is, but there's a book that Draven carries now, and we use that as an item familiar for various bonuses and effects and different things like that. It doesn't come up very much in the story though, but yeah, it is there. It's just he's got this weird bond with this book, and it hasn't been emphasized that much, both in real life but also in the web series. But yeah, so he has a familiar / homunculus / whatever right now. It's just the book that he has by his side. If you had to pick 3 songs that describe you, what would they be and why? I'm sorry, Sora, I'm not sure I have a good answer to that. Baba Yetu, Never Gonna Give You Up, and Sandstorm. No, I really don't know, I'm sorry. Texura asks, what is your biggest regret in the campaign? Probably one of several different side quests we never got around to doing. God, I don't know. I mean, both in life and in gaming, I try not to live with regret. I try to be like, well, then, you know, whatever happened has led to this moment, and so I wouldn't want to necessarily get rid of that or whatever. It's been fine. It's all part of the story. So yeah, I don't really regret anything. But there's a lot of like side plot stuff and side quests that have come up that I'm like, yeah, it's too bad we didn't see how that went. But, you know, we had other stuff we also had to do, so that's the way it is. I always wondered, in an episode, Draven said he felt about becoming Warforged as the game rules didn't suck. Did he keep looking into other ways that could do that sort of thing? There's a prestige class that an Artificer can take to effectively turn himself into a Warforged over time. It's not the strongest prestige class. It's not necessarily suck, but it was definitely, it would have led to a very different character, because I think that tends to make you more of a combat machine or something like that. I think that might have been it. Now, I don't think Draven really has ever, I don't think in character Draven has ever wanted to make himself into a robot or anything like that. I think like me as a player may have said like, oh, I thought about it, but it wasn't good for who I wanted him to be. I don't think Draven wants to become a robot. Not really his thing. Again, he's a human supremacist. Why would he want to not be human? right? Chugyukur says, what lost artifact, forgotten knowledge, or ancient secret does Draven wish to find and or recreate, and why does it matter to him? Well, the creation matrix is definitely the thing. The idea of like this artifact that can kind of make anything. Yeah, we've got to find that shit and figure out what the hell is going on with that. That's a big honking deal. At this point, like, most of what those people did is a big mystery and something we've got to figure out, because holy crap. What was the most expensive thing Draven made? I don't know. I've got various lists of like things to buy and stuff, but I don't have my list of like crafting anymore. And again, I don't know what gear necessarily you guys have at that point in the story, and if it might be a spoilery or whatever. I have pretty beefy armor. The +4 breastplate. Oh wait, no, never mind. I didn't make that. I found it, and you guys haven't seen it yet. The +4 breastplate of yeah, I didn't make that. I know that he's done some modifications to some of the gear he's found, like for example, the crossbow. I think there's been some extra like pimping up of the crossbow. Maybe, and those costs tend to go like Super Saiyan. Honestly, the most expensive stuff we've crafted is probably for other people. It's probably stuff I've crafted for other people. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that. I'm terribly, terribly sorry. Oh, Chip Colette asked, my question was, how old was Draven and his wife when they got married? So yeah, I tried to address that there. I don't have it explicitly written down. The answer to that is younger probably than I'd expected when I first started writing his backstory, because I wanted him to have a son that was, you know, well, in my head, almost a young adult. And then I realized, hold on, what was I, like 12 when we got married? That doesn't make any sense. So probably relatively young. Again, sort of that like, you know, noble, feudal, you get sort of arranged and things get worked out relatively early on, maybe. I don't know. I probably would make, the story probably makes a lot more sense if Draven was actually something like 40 when we started the adventure. And then it's like, okay, now all of a sudden it makes sense that maybe he got married around 20 and now maybe his son is 20. That probably makes more sense. But, so, your mileage may vary. Maybe the solar cycle there is different. So 32 isn't as young as you think. I don't know. Have you ever thought about multi-classing / prestige classes? Artificer, you've got to think of the Artificer kind of as a primary spellcaster class, in that almost any multi-classing tends to be bad, because like as a wizard or whatever, anything like that, cleric or anything, any multi-class type thing or prestige class that causes you to lose caster levels tends to be pretty poor. And the situation is worse with the Artificer, because unless you sort of like, you know, sort of house rule it or whatever, and I'm sure Demonac actually would be okay with like finding something, most of the classes that would be like, you know, prestige classes that are like, and gain +1 spell level, well, that's, you're not a caster as an Artificer. But I mean, probably would be able to say like, yeah, it's fine, you can, +1 spellcaster level can apply to your Artificer in some way or something like that. But no, I think, you know, for a while it's like, well, if I end up using my wands a lot, there is a prestige class, I think, that makes you like a crazy, like, pew-pew dual-wielding wand badass type of thing. And, you know, certainly Draven has done a lot of wanding, but I do like the buffing a lot. It's very satisfying. And most of my feats and things like that have gone in the buffing and crafting side of things. So that would be the one thing. I can't remember. It's probably in one of the Eberron Dragon Marked or Races or Magic of Eberron or one of those, probably. I don't remember the name of it, but there's a pew-pew wanding class. I think it might even require a Dragon Mark. I don't remember. You guys will find it, and I'm sure you'll figure out what it is. What is your exact relationship with black? Asked Tower of Death. I think I've addressed that at this point, so maybe I'll try to move on. If there was no cost, what would be the most epic weapon you would create? +5 crossbow of Bane everything? I don't know. Do you have any ideas of how to cure the astral plague, aka space AIDS? I can't remember the state of things exactly in the series that you guys have seen that far. Clearly, there are like, it's like cosmological energies at work. So I think at that point we're thinking like something with energy manipulation. We've got the sea doing stuff as well. Maybe there's a way to extract the energy without killing anyone. Like that sort of thing. I think that's the angle we're going with at that point. But I suspect there will be quite a bit of development in that field very, very soon in the web series. So stay tuned there. How ambitious are you about taking back your family's land? If it came to just warfare, I would have a hard time believing it that we would do it in this generation. But if the peace treaty goes out, then that's a whole other thing. Just how many just in case scrolls does Draven have? Has Draven ever etched/used minor schema? Not the minor schema. Well, yes. I mean, we use eternal wands. I think the minor schemas are basically the same thing. So we use that. How many scrolls do I have? Is an interesting question. I don't know. Like, obviously this will depend on whatever part of the series is on. But in this list here, break enchantment, comprehend languages, dimensional anchor, dimensional door, dimensional lock, disguise self, fly mass, heal, hold portal, light of Mercuria, rope trick, silent image, stingray. Some of these are scrolls I found, not crafted. See invisibility, sunbeam, tongues, flame arrow, blistering radiance, corpse candle, superior resistance, incorporeal nova, mass reflective disguise, phantom foe, gem jump, which I think is maybe a spell that was invented specifically for the campaign. That's a smattering of some of the scrolls that Draven has or has had. There's also all the wands. So we've got, like, I've got the Wand of Bear's Endurance, Wand of Cure Light Wound, Wand of Lesser Fire Orb, Wand of Expeditious Retreat, that's an Eternal Wand, an Eternal Wand of Fly, Eternal Wand of Heroism, Wand of Fireball, Wand of Orb of Force, Wand of Earth Reaver. He comes prepared. That's what he does. It's like, well, I may as well have a bunch of those. And that doesn't count the, like, sort of like insta scrolls or insta wands that I can create with, like, variety of infusions and stuff like that. How is Draven's research into space aids coming along? Would Polaron be able to help him? That is certainly one of the things that Draven would be thinking at this point in the story, because Polaron has a lot of energy manipulation stuff. And again, it's sort of the idea of the astral plague is actually sort of astral and cosmic energy. That's sort of lingering around and sticking around and being inappropriate and stuff like that. And so the idea of, like, sort of draining and redirecting and extracting that energy is one of the things that we've been thinking. And in fact, one of the things that may have come up, like, sort of out of character at this point, or not, I'm not sure what the timelines are, but one of the things Draven is thinking of is with that whole idea. So again, I may be slightly spoiling something that's going to be like discovered relatively soon. The idea that it's like this sort of like cosmic energy of some kind, right? Because I think what was happening before, the what's their name? Itarans? I think the whole idea was, like, with these portals and the astral plague, was they may have been trying to tap some sort of astral energy, and that's what led to the astral plague. So that's why it's like, oh, maybe it's energy and whatever, maybe we can extract it. And the crystal beast that we fought, like, very early on gave a hint as that too. So it was like, maybe that's an avenue to cure it. And Draven, a part of him is like, well, maybe I don't have to necessarily extract this energy for myself, right? I was talking earlier, like, Draven never wanted to turn himself into a robot, but could you imagine Draven with an Iron Man suit powered by astral plague power? That is an idea that, like, persists for a very, 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 very long time. Okay, people were asking about what items we want to create. That's Draven's endgame. That's Draven's endgame is, I'll cure everyone else from their astral plague, and maybe for myself, I can make myself an Iron Man suit. Just because. That's the sort of idea. So I don't know. These are not things that I that I necessarily know or develop different ways or whatever, but at the time, certainly that's where my brain was. Again, I might be off like a few episodes one way or another, but that's where my mind was. Where were we? What inspired Draven to continue souping up the crossbow, as well as using it for revolving wand holder? I mean, flavor, certainly. I like the idea of, like, because I using wands is a very powerful thing with the Artificer, and I just like the idea of, like, no, he's still always using the crossbow. It's just like, yeah, a revolver where he, like, changes modes and things like that. And my whole idea with the, like, he would always enchant, even from the start, he would enchant his crossbow with Bane, right? So, like, Bane, I don't know, monstrous humanoid, Bane dragon, whatever. But it was all the idea that it was an alchemical thing. It wasn't a magical thing. It wasn't casting Bane. Is his crossbow, his original crossbow, had all these different, like, vials of chemicals, and what he'd do is he would dial in a certain combination of these chemicals that would effectively be sort of an anti-werewolf, like, poison almost. And that was how his Bane would work on his crossbow. Because to me that always made a lot of sense. So that just kept expanding from that. How do you feel about Demonac's representation of you and your character, including the voice? Has he ever asked for advice on how to represent the character? Or do you offer any? He has asked a couple of times, especially early on before we had some certain, like, the voice recording, when there was a lot of notes and some of it was incomplete. You might ask, like, okay, we had this scene. Do you remember what you said or how you might have acted in that? Overall, no. I feel Demonac in real life is really good at, like, imitating people. And I once heard, like, people who are good at imitating people are people who are good at, like, sort of listening to people. It's more of a listening skill than a talking skill, even though it sounds like the other way around. And anyway, I thought he always had a really good grasp of my character. I thought it was fantastic. Really love it. Makes me love Draven more based on that representation. Because again, I said before, to me, D&D characters are sort of like characters that live their own lives. They tell me what they're like. And then it's like, now it's more so because I can really step outside the character and see him like, yes, that's Draven. Yes, that's totally what I'm going for. That is Draven right there. Which is kind of awesome. Maybe I did a really good job with the character. Maybe Demonac's just really good at it. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. I don't know, but I'm like, I dig it. What was your reaction when you found out Demonac's plan? Which plan? He has a lot of plans. I don't know what you mean. What sort of thought went into creating your character's background? It's been stated that a lot of what Demonac has done for the backgrounds was, well, Demonac, but I'm curious how much hand did you give Draven away? Yeah. So, yeah, I addressed that. I wrote a lot of his backstory for that. Some of the things in terms of, like, the politics of the nobility and things like that, we worked together. Some of it was expanded by him, like, during play. Like, oh, this would be what the situation would be politically, and be, oh, yeah, that's cool. But in terms of what you see in the videos, that's, yeah, I don't think he's really made up much for the videos. So mostly I had the backstory, and then it's been expanded, like, interactively through play. Even the other players, people pitch different things, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this was this? And we're like, oh yeah, we should totally do that. So there'd be some of that. What sort of character did you originally envision Draven to be? Has it lived up to the vision? Yeah, it totally has. Yeah, I think everything sort of went to plan. There was definitely, no, I'm pretty pleased. I think, again, characters, they're living elements, they evolve, but my plan was always to have Draven evolve and to expand and to change over time, and I was curious to see how that would go, especially with his interaction with other races. Does being an Artificer, commonly considered OP in 3.5, make you feel like you outshine the party? No, not at all. Partially because I'm trying to avoid, like, some of the craziest builds. And we are a very role-playing centric party. And I'm trying to use a lot of buffing, right? Like, one of the biggest things that Draven does is try to make everyone else better. Like, sometimes he unleashes massive amounts of damage, but everyone also knows, like, when I unleash massive amounts of damage, they know that I just, like, that was a 2,000 gold piece attack or something like that, because it was a maximized force wand or some bullshit like that. And the thing is, the party's quite strong overall. I mean, you've got Little One using Book of Battle stuff. Little One is the toughest and probably most significant damage dealer in the group. You've got Briarstone, who plays Black, who is has got crazy, bizarre synergy going on with, like, his defensive stuff. This comes up all the time. The guy who plays Little One often says he's pretty sure if he were to go toe-to-toe with Black, he would lose. He's, like, 100% sure of that. because of the reflective damage and all kinds of things. So I don't know if anyone feels outshined. Clearly, Angel is a super badass with a lot of stuff that she does that gets a lot of credit. She deals a lot of damage, but also has unbelievably good abilities for things, especially with some of the magic gear she's picked up. And there's a fifth person in the party that you guys haven't met yet, but that person, one of the first things that happens early on guarantees that they do not feel. I do not think they'll feel outshined. And we've been a lot of friends for a long time. A lot of stuff has worked together. No, I don't think that's the problem. It would be very easy. I mean, you can make any kind of character like way over the top. I don't think that would be the case. If anything, like I think like Draven is enough of a backseat. I don't think that's a situation that's come up with Draven. You could make an Artificer insanely OP, but role playing comes first. And so that I think we're a fairly balanced party, actually. Especially with the buffs. I think Draven makes other people feel OP, and that's a pretty good way to be. How do you make magic items in your campaign? More or less standard 3.5 rules. Although in this particular campaign, Demonac has house ruled that powerful magic items, which I think there's sort of a nebulous line there, requires these eyes of aberrations and things like that to empower, which is a great flavor text thing and helps keep a few things in check. We also have a few house rules in terms of you can have someone else pay the XP cost for an item, so I can craft an item for someone else and they pay the XP cost, for example. I also this may or may not come into play in his campaign, in this one in particular, but our super set of house rules that I originally had for one of my campaigns, I actually allow people to craft magic items with just the craft skill. So you don't have to be a wizard or anything necessarily. You could use the craft skill and use magic device and a few different things. We got some special house rules for that because a lot of the craft and profession skills and stuff don't see a lot of action in game. And I'm like, no, I want, if you're a really good like metal crafter, like weapons crafter, then you can make magic items somehow. We can find a way, basically, is the idea, because I think that's really cool. Because that's a classic trope in a lot of fantasy novels, right? You've got the master smith who makes like an artifact or something. I mean, artifact's a little rich for this, but that sort of example. There's no reason, like, if you're really good and you're the best and you get like the right materials to mix into your magic item, you don't need to be a wizard. You can make a freaking magic item. Everyone's an artificer in my world. There you go. I think we're good. No. Oh, we got one more question. Does Draven come up with some... Oh, this is, I think, related to magic items. Do you discuss it? Do you nerf it or whatever? The group as a whole tends to be very interested in game balance. We like to do really cool stuff, but the group as a whole tends to be pretty good about self-policing and things, slash self-nerfing and doing different things like that. We will... So, yeah... magic item creation as a group tends to be self-policed and things like that. And again, like Draven is the engine for making items for everyone. He's not specifically making items that are any more powerful for himself or anyone else. And yeah, I'm sure it comes up sometimes where someone's like, oh, I'd like to create this and this and this. And it's like, well, hold on, we got to dial it back or that sort of thing. But no, I don't know. I mean, again, almost like everyone in the group is way more interested in telling a story than anything else. And they have a certain vision of what they want their character to feel like, and then they aim for that as much as possible. So, yeah, I don't think that's been a problem. If Draven got a wish spell at the current point in the videos, what would he wish for and why? Probably a cure for the astral plague. And or that all KT would die. That's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching. And do check out the Tales from My D&D Campaign videos over on Demonac's channel, linked in the doobly-doo. I'll see you guys next time. And thanks for watching, folks. Bye-bye.